that celebrate the traditional leaders who fought in those wars. Therefore, the offering explores the overlapping and oftentimes complex relationship between identity, memory, heritage, and cultural landscapes. The book further draws particular attention to the important roles played by statues. As you know that there are statues, for those of you who have seen the book. This statues honors traditional leaders who fought wars of resistance and have played important roles to save people's land from colonial settlers who regard themselves as conquerors. Now, in my humble opinion, to regard settler colonizers as conquerors is an affront on Africans' collective memory and humanity. This is us, Africans, still standing after centuries of so-called conquest. We have so many resources yet untapped, even after so much has been stolen from our stables. Moreover, our culture, traditions, language, and ways of life still subsists, even after routine underrating and bastardizing of settled colonizers. Ladies and gentlemen, a nagging question is, who are we? I'm glad you asked. The author is opening our eyes and our spirit to the undefeatability of us as people, as a race, if you will. For what it's worth, this offering by Mahunele Thotse is a welcome expansion as well as an addition to the growing literature on the memorialization of the wars of resistance in South Africa. Resistance is defined as a force, such as friction that operates in the opposite direction of motion of a body and tends to prevent or slow down the body's motion. It is also defined as a refusal to accept or comply with something. It is defined as a refusal. When you refuse to comply with something, you are resisting. Okay. The public art of commemorating the wars of resistance, a Brief Limpopo Chapter by Mahunele Thotse, appear like a timely promise to scrutinize, interrogate, and abrogate any kind of ignorance regarding the wars of resistance in South African history, and especially in the history of our Limpopo province. The book further provides a stimulating introduction to the issues of how South Africans commemorate the wars of resistance. Dr. Mahunele Thotse's book Dr. Mahunele Thotse's book happens to be the first to document thoroughly and persuasively the process by which Limpopo province came to narrate the wars of resistance through public art. We all know the importance of art, whether private or public art or in public spaces. The aesthetic of art all around us can never be unrecognized. The documents and the photographs discussed in the book make for an essential text for those interested in cultural studies as well as historical and heritage side, including our tour guides. As the UL Library and Information Services family, we welcome you to a robust unveiling of yet another milestone achievement. May we continue to resist everything or power that may want to undermine our African humanity. Thank you for listening, and God bless the memories and spirits of our ancestors. You are welcomed. Le amoretjwe.
Thank you so much. We feel welcomed. I hope those who are joining us virtually also felt how this book is so relevant to the discourses of decolonizing. Now I'm going to give it over to our publisher to have something to say. She comes from the House of Emerging Scholars Initiative, short it's known as ESI Press. It's Miss Kentani Maluleke. How do we connect them here? Can someone help? I think they are virtual. She's online. Hello. Oh, Maluleke. That's not her.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Apologies for that. Apologies. I wanted to say thank you to everybody who has attended today, whether online or in person, and especially those who have traveled some distance to come and join us today. We're very grateful for that. My name is Kansani Maluleke, and I'm one of the project managers here at ESI Press. And just for context, what ESI Press is we are a publishing company that is very fresh and new. We were established in 2020 with the intention of giving young people, emerging scholars, graduates, an opportunity to publish their books and journals on our platform. A very big part of ESI is that we are an open access platform, which means that all of our books you can find online and you can download them and read them for free. So when you have time, even if that is right now, please go on our website and go look at our library and enjoy. I did want to say that it has been a pleasure to work with Dr. Mahunele Thotse throughout the journey of publication, and even more of a pleasure to work with the team at University of Limpopo. There have been so many efforts that came together to make this event happen, and we're just very happy and excited that it's happening today finally. I did want to say, I think Wars of Resistance is excellent. I think I'm a bit biased because I myself am a child of Limpopo, and I will say this is one of the first few pieces of literature I've experienced where I'm directly interacting with town names from where I grew up. So I come from Mokopane, and this is probably the first time that I've seen literature and experienced it in this way. And the affirmation from that and the representation from that is priceless. So thank you very much, Professor, for that. Wars of Resistance is really this amazing book that explores those complex relationships between history, culture, landscapes, and memorabilia. And it does a very good take on looking at statues and exploring the roles that people have played and relaying those roles that people have played in acts against resistance and colonization. And I think that is absolutely. And I want to specifically thank one of our project managers here, Ms. Yanga Malutana, and especially our director, Dr. Heather Thanksmore, for making this happen. And that is it from us. I'm looking forward to the rest of the presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I hope you can later take our questions because most of us would like to publish, and I've noticed that there are some students here who might have some incline in entering into academia like that. Now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which is Professor Creole. She's in Visual Culture Studies, History in the University of Pretoria. She completed her undergraduate studies at UP in what was the then Department of History and Cultural Studies. We hope to hear from you. Yeah, please take over.
Thank you very much and greetings. I'm very honored to be here, and I want to express my sincere congratulations to Mahunele and greetings also to his family. There is a Pretoria connection with this book because Mahunele and I were once colleagues in that department, and as I will say, I think I will read a bit from the introduction I wrote to the book. This book takes a Pretoria tradition and regenerates it and makes something completely new, and I think makes something right about it. This book is about the making of a province. I realize that if you are 30 years or younger in the audience, then you have never lived in a world where there was no Limpopo province. And things like, or words like Transvaal, that's a word. Homelands and Bantustans is something you learn from in history. It's not something you have experienced. How does this book make a province? It's an intricately layered story about how things, thoughts and practices, once new and contested, sometimes remain controversial, but oftentimes over time also become taken for granted. It is about how our ways of seeing the world, although we might think of them as stable, are in fact constantly adjusting. It is about the ways our view of the world is comprised not only of observation. Remember, I'm from visual studies, so observation is important to me. But it's also about participation. And this is as much in ritualized collective behaviors as through our own individual agency and our ability to influence outcomes. And this is what I think Mahunele Thotse explains so well in this book, that a province is an amalgamation of contributions from government, the community, but certainly also individuals to make knowledge, to remember, to decide what to remember and how it will be remembered, but also of what is forgotten. So by engaging with these aspects, the findings of the book is placed within the context of the international scholarship on public monuments and on the making of national identities. And as such, this book contributes to public history and historical memory studies, and it will be read with much interest by fellow researchers in these fields. But what is of course also the beauty, I think it's also a book which will be very well received in the Limpopo community, whether they reside in Limpopo every day or sometimes visit for holidays or identify with the area as part of who they are and where they come from. The book also contributes, of course, into the history of this whole area. Chapter 3 provides a thorough and systematic assessment of the scholarly research conducted on the conflicts between African local polities and Boer and British forces as from the 19th century. And this is where the Pretoria link comes in. Many of these studies were written as dissertations at the history department of the University of Pretoria, especially around the 1940s and 1950s. That's almost 100 years ago. But what Mahunele did, he took the courage of reading these Afrikaans studies, which must, I think, be very painful in many respects. But the way he engages with it, I think, shows how the scholarly gaze has shifted in this time from seeing local African communities as the problem to viewing colonized forces as the aggressors, as it should be. But from the earliest studies analyzing campaigns against African communities through to the more recent ones, critically engaging with the presence and the policies of Boer and British settlers and administrators. And so Thotse's scholarship culminates to bring it to the issues of our present day, issues of leadership and land. So in that respect, I think this book is as much a cultural history of the political as it is a political history of the cultural, and of the very particular version of Southern modernity, Southern as in the global South, which Limpopo province and scholarship from Limpopo province encapsulates. The product of a modern negotiated political settlement with a democratically elected government, the province also builds on its founding myths on traditional warrior kings from a pre-colonial dispensation, incorporating thanksgiving to the ancestors and cleansing rituals into ceremonies presided over by a provincial premier. So all of these aspects come together in our present view of the world. And these apparent contradictions give us also some insight into our South African conditions. Modernity for us, I think, entails the ability to recognize the chosen path into the future as different from the past, and yet to identify certain realms of our continued existence as traditional. And I think the book explains so very well where the myths helping us to be both, looking forward, moving forward, while looking in the rearview mirror, contribute to what it means to be South African, a citizen anchored to the past while being human, viewing the future. I congratulate the University of Limpopo and the author. I thank the press, and I also congratulate the university for the way in which they celebrate this contribution to knowledge in the area. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Prof. So many points there. I'm reminded of an area in KwaZulu-Natal called Harry Smith and Lady Smith. And when you go through the history there, those two areas were named in those names because Henry Smith had killed King Hitsa. And we as the Xhosa nation still say we don't know where his head is because the head was taken to the United Kingdom. So these things in terms of decolonizing our spaces are very important. I mean, the naming of areas, the statues and what we celebrate. It's very important that we don't end up celebrating the perpetuators or perpetrators while the victims are still in remembrance of who they were and still trying to recollect themselves in the space of our democracy. Now, history can be many things, but I'm gonna bring a speaker who once spoke about an area that I really, really enjoyed, about the songs that are sang for the struggle and how the Ngunis dominated. His name is Twala. He's a professor now. He's a professor of history with us, the University of Limpopo. We are so honored. He was once with the University of Free State, and we fortunately got him to come this side. And while he was there, he was an associate professor at the Department of History and the vice dean in the Faculty of Humanities and at this University of Free State, which is no longer there, and this is good news. He's the author of 11 chapters. He co-authored 3 in a book series entitled The Road to Democracy in South Africa around the times of 1970 until 1990. He recently published a chapter he co-authored with Peter Limb entitled The ICU in Free State DOPS and DOTBs. In the book, Labor Struggles in the Southern Africa around 1919 and 1949, which was published in 2023. Another chapter that he co-authored was with Mr. Mohau, which is one of our own, Sodat, which is entitled Lesotho Migrant Workers in the Orange Free State Farms, was published in December 2023. In 2024, he co-authored a book entitled Migrants, Borders, and Borderlands, Making National Identity in South African Communities. He is the recipient of Andrew Mellon Foundation and NIHS grants. He has been awarded several visiting/research fellowships. He's also been associated with Harvard University as he was doing these fellowships and visitations, and also the University of Ghana and the University of California, which is in Los Angeles in the United States of America. Needless to say, he's a worthy person to listen to and sort of give a note of what he has to say today. And I welcome you, Professor Twala, as our speaker in this platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mefezaga, and good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon. After the introduction, now I know how my obituary would look like. Mefezaga said something about Harry Smith. How do you know that I am from Harry Smith? And we tried to change the name from Harry Smith to Indabazwe, but we are still battling even today. Yes, I saw Lady Smith has changed now to Umnambit officially last month. Yes, that is history. I just wanted to start and say, when a dog bites a person or a man, it is normal. But when a man bites a dog, it is something abnormal. It is something that people will talk about forever. I think what Dr. Thotse did here I also want to footnote and say, Dr. Thotse, after this book, and I read it twice, you are going to get academic criticisms. And some of the
It is also important that the book is giving us a discourse to know what history. And a good history should be teaching. And a good history should be reading. I usually ask my honors students the following question. What is the difference between African history and the history of Africa? They are not the same. They are not the same history, or is this book about the history of Africa? 2 days ago on Monday, I had an interview with SAFM at 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock. And the question that they posed to me and other presenters there was, does teaching history open or heal a nation's wound? And it was eye-opening because some of the people today, they walk tall and despise their own history. By virtue that you know when you were born, then you are a historian, but you are unconscious of being a historian. By virtue that you know when you started working and studying here, you are technically a historian, but you are not aware that you are a historian. Therefore, we are here together with Dr. Thotse to open your eyes. On page 9 of the book, Dr. Thotse says, monuments as social representations of history also function as resources for managing the interplay of social identities. Social identities are important, and we can only have social identities when we understand where we come from. And we can only understand where we come from when we juxtapose where we come from with what we are having today, in order to make a way forward. In my previous life, I was involved in the West of the Free State with the removal of the Staines statue. And because we said that Staines statue was because of the history of the Boer Bond of 1929. And the values that Stein stood for during that period are not the values of 2004. Therefore, I was insulted by whoever on different African newspapers. I'm happy to be here, that I'm not going to be insulted again. But that was a message sent to the public that while we are having these statues, but we need to read through those statues and how those statues came to be. And that is what Dr. Thotse is saying about the public art. But what is pleasing for me today is that this launch is taking place during Freedom Month. And what is also pleasing, is that it is taking place on my birthday. I never thought in my life that Sasa would be approaching me so quick. I guess my heart is being processed elsewhere. And as South Africans, it is also important that we need to memorialize what is ours and give text to the art and give text to the statues and to the monuments. And that is important for us. Fortunately, 2 months ago, I visited another African country, Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam. I spent some few days in Dar es Salaam. And what I could pick up from the Tanzanians and also visiting Zanzibar, what I could pick up from those people was the question of the love for the earth. And then you can't go out of the airport in Dar es Salaam and they will ask you about the history of Tanzania. No. But they will ask you about the history of South Africa. And how many of us can answer people about our own history. Therefore, we are commending Dr. Thotse for having taken this bold stance and journey of researching about public art and the public spaces. In history, we say all spaces are important because some of the historical events took place in open fields. Those who are old enough, like myself, in the 1980s, we used to have meetings in open spaces. And those open spaces, we have forgotten about them today. That is where the liberation was hatched. And commemorating what is of historical and cultural significance, to other people, they see it as being backwardness.
it as being uncultured. To some people, they see it as being uneducated. And to some people, they see it as being barbaric. That you are talking about culture. Therefore, I usually tell my students and say, my friend has a daughter at the age of 6. And then I ask the daughter's name, and the daughter says, my name is Dino. And I say, did you get into writing for me? And the daughter wrote it there. And if the person is beat, the person will say, I buy it. And that is mental slavery. And that is mental slavery. Until such time that we unshackle ourselves from mental slavery, we are not going to win the battle in terms of our own history. What is striking also about this book is the contemplation of Limpopo. And I think this is the first book and the first of its kind, whereby we are saying Dr. Thotse is walking the talk and is not paying lip service of saying we need to write something about Limpopo without writing something about Limpopo. I think this is commendable. And then this reminded me of one of the Pan-Africanists called Booker T. Washington, who once said, I quote, dip your bucket where you are. Simply means that do something where you are. You can't say you are thirsty, you want water, and then you work a bucket, and you are standing in the middle of the river, and you aspire for another water from another river. Because you die, because of thirst, because you didn't dip your bucket where you are. And I want to say, and proudly so, that Dr. Thotse decided to dip his bucket where he is. Public spaces and art are for public representation, and we need to protect that. And there is a correlation and a relationship between liberation's science and what Dr. Thotse put here. Because the wars of resistance fought by these traditional leaders. Although I don't want to call them traditional leaders because the very same concept of traditional, it has got some negative connotations. We call them leaders. They simply and rigorously engaged with the colonizers in order for us to be where we are today. And Thotse highlights in the book the values of having to preserve and having to protect and having to commemorate these sites in Limpopo. One of the benefits is that we are going to have historical value out of them, 2, political value out of them, educational value out of them, economic value out of them. Hence, from the historical point of view, we say history is about our past qualities, and our past qualities is our present history. Thank you very much, Dr. Thotse, for seeing the light and making us what we are today. In conclusion, I wanted to say to all of us who are really proud South Africans, not South Africans by day and Europeans by night. Those of us who are proud South Africans by day and South Africans by night, we need to do the following. We need to watch. By watch, I say with the W, we need to watch our ways. And then by A, we need to watch our actions. By T, we need to watch our tongues. By C, we need to watch our character. By H, we need to watch our heads. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. When you mentioned Tanzania, I'm reminded that we have so much contrast today.
Yes.
The piece of land that was given to Dadu Owatam.
In Morogoro.
Yes, in Morogoro, he said, those who want to go and fight but not all of us can fight, and that's why we have our schools. So South Africa is celebrated almost everywhere. But Tanzania is unique because it really appreciated our struggle. I noticed that most of us who are young here who haven't reached this level. It is possible, Dr. thank you that you are able to show us beauty. It's possible while we come from such an institution. The legacy of the institution in itself should be commemorated, because this is where the excellence would come from before we were privileged to go to other institutions. Thotse and this institution were tight like this, and most black students came out of this institution and were great. So we also have an opportunity to be great. And it is because of such moments that we remember that our stories are worth telling. Our own understanding of what we need to share with the world is exactly where we need to start. It doesn't have to come from somewhere else. And just because you don't think this area is worth learning about, as someone who comes from the Eastern Cape, I am forever fascinated with the province, especially when I studied, because Usovenga is not one word. It's actually a representation of different tribes that are from this area. But you find that the politics, when you walk down to ShopRite, the owners want to be respected and the vendors want you to look at them and respect them. And yet you forget that the name in itself, called Sovega, had that intention. And we should always remember why we name areas and spaces the way we do, because it reminds us of our core. It tells us what we do. We were never off the mark, but because we prefer to go closer to Western perspectives, we always move away. So thank you, Dr. reminding us that when we pass by a real site of an old person we don't know, we should go closer and read. We should not be intimidated of its oldness, but we should go there and allow it to speak to us. So that's what monuments do. They are erected so that we can go and remember. And we can go and remember that we don't come from nothing, but we come from kings that actually fought before fighting was popular, that did not wear shirts of EFF, but were wearing their skin and went on to fight still. And today we stand because of them. Now, I'm going to introduce our colleague who's in Venga, Mr. Mavisela, to come in and join us and share something with us. And we hope to also learn. Thank you so much, Prof. Twan. That was a good reminder of where we are never told about our own country, the relationship with Tanzania, and how close we should be and get to the north. Mr. Mavisela, are you around? We're going to move on with the program then, if we can't get a hold of Mr. Mavisela. Doc, I have to talk about you now, because then we are moving on to you. Now let me introduce Dr. Thotse, who is also my boss, and my job is on the line, so I must do this right. The thing about being an African, you can't call an old person by name. So I skip the name and I go to the surname. I'm sorry that I call your forefathers, but you represent them. Thotse is a senior lecturer and head of Department for Social Sciences and Economics Management Education at the University of Limpopo. He graduated with a DPhil in Cultural History from the University of Pretoria. He has been extensively involved in education, heritage, museum studies for years. He served in those areas and the heritage sector in various practices or capacities. He served as a teacher, as a lecturer, and the deputy director and acting director for the heritage policy, research and development at the National Department of Arts and Culture. He is also a member of the Council of the War Museum of the World Palace. He's also a member of the Gauteng Geographic Names Committee. He's also a member of the Council of the Limpopo Heritage Resources Agency. He's also a member of panel of external advisors to the Polokwane Local Geographic Names Committee. He's a review editor of Historia, Journal of the Historical Associates of South Africa, editorial member of the South African Journal of Cultural Histories. He's a member of the editorial advisory board for the Yesterday and Today Journal of History Education, published in collaboration with the South African Society for History Educators. Dr. Thotse has been visiting universities such as Augsburg in Germany. He also collaborated in writing of a series of the book titled History for All that was published by Mahunele and prescribed for the grade 10 and 11 in South Africa. So that technically means he's our writer for the textbook of history. He's my boss, as I've said, but he became a father that I respect and that I hope his family is not jealous of us taking him as a father. On behalf of the department, we are very proud of you. We hope you teach us, and we are welcoming you to this platform to share your formula to this type of a success.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to thank you, Program Director. I want to also do some recognitions and acknowledgements, starting with my family. My elder brother is there. Maybe you can just raise your hands. Next to him is my eldest son. I want to also thank you, colleagues. I notice we have in our presence my direct manager, Prof. Maruma. Prof, thank you very much for the support. Professor Tola has been a very close friend of mine. We met way back, more than 30 years back. I was happy to see him around at the University of Limpopo. Let me also acknowledge colleagues from the University of Pretoria. Lisa Krill was once also a colleague of mine. We worked in the same department where I worked for 8 years. Thank you very much, Lisa, for all the support throughout these years. Even today, as we speak, we are working with some projects together. Colleagues, this is probably the easiest and simplest book I will ever author. And I'll tell you why. The material that I was working with is in the public domain. When you work with statues, all you have to do is visit them. They will be there waiting for you. You don't even need to make an appointment. That's how easy it was for me. I would just wake up and go straight to where the statue is, and the statue will be waiting for me. And what is even good is the statues that I was investigating are honoring our traditional leaders, our chiefs and kings, how generous those can be. You go to a king's statue, there are certain tricks that you have to perform in order for the information to trickle down. I was taught by Chris and Van Leeuwen, who said to me in their work, You simply have to go and humble yourself in front of the leaders. The chief or the king's statue is always up there. You look up to it. And when you look up to it, they will look down at you, because that is the only way of respect you can ever offer them. I abuse this Kukune statue because it's close to home. I would just go there, kneel down, and he would look down at me and say, "Mutulu, how can I be of assistance?" Then I would say, "Get my information." That's how I got my information. I hope now you understand why it was easy for me to do this. Ladies and gentlemen, this book was inspired by the installation of statues in honor of our traditional leaders who fought the wars of resistance in what is today our Limpopo province. Just the prospects of contributing to the awareness of public history and culture in the province of my own birth, that was something that was also driving me. Colleagues have already indicated that the wars of resistance were fought particularly in the second half of the 19th century, between 1850 and 1900. Now, merely a mention of those years reminds me, it says to you something about the early pioneers of the liberation struggle in this part of South Africa. And it is important to notice that as a province, Limpopo province also has contributed to the pioneering of the liberation struggles. So this book is merely a reflection of the history of the province as told through the medium of art and statues in particular, as told on the provincial public landscape. I want to commend the province of Limpopo for taking this brave step of not just presenting education about its history, about its historical past, but simplifying it by installing a statue, or what others call monuments, of a traditional leader in each of the 5 districts. Now, you would know that the Limpopo province comprises of 5 districts, and each and every one, in each and every one of the districts, you have a statue. Hoshimola's statue has been installed at Thotse in the Greater Sekhukhune district. We know who Sekhukhune is. He fought against the ZAR. He came out triumphant in 1876. He then had to face the British again in 1879, where he eventually surrendered and was taken to prison to Pretoria. His statue, as I'm saying, is at Thotse. That's district number 1. Hoshimola's statue is at his place in front of the Mahunele tribal offices in the Capricorn district in Amalabo. He also had to face the ZAR wars in 1894. He also surrendered. He was taken to prison. Osunkulungunyani statue is installed in front of the information center in Giyani. We know Osunkulungunyani fought against the Portuguese, particularly in Mozambique, where he was eventually taken to prison in Lisbon in 1895, from where he died in 1906. His statue is in Giyani, in the Mopani district. We also have Thotse Mokopane. Thotse Mokopane has not been erected with a statue simply because when you come up with a statue, you need also a picture of the subject that you are honoring. Unfortunately, in his case, they couldn't find a picture, which is why they settled to come up with a tombstone, which has been a massive tombstone at his graveside, which also depicts the history of the Ndebele people, and particularly the Gekana people. That is in the Waterberg district. We know what's happened with Thotse Mokopane. He was deceased in 1854 when almost the entire tribe was almost completely wiped out, but they survived. Thotse Mokopane, just here next to us, also fought bravely in defense in 1895, and unfortunately he was overpowered by a group of Thotse mercenaries who severed his head and took it to Pittsburgh as a trophy. That is the history that is around us. Now, we want to applaud the Limpopo province for making this history available on the landscape. But as a bonus, the provincial government, along with, rather in collaboration with the National Heritage Council, also commissioned another monument which is in Musina, called the Ubuntu Memorial Monument, which is celebrating the same 6 leaders. It is available there for colleagues and for whoever is interested in the history of this province. Now, the book was conceptualized as a way to assist the provincial effort. So it is, in other words, also an attempt to put together the far-flung districts and bring them closer to the interested reader. Not everyone will be able to go to Waterberg, to Capricorn, to Mopani, to everywhere, but the book brings all of that history together in one reading. Professor Greer already spoke of Chapter 3. It focuses on the wars and the roles that were played by these individual leaders to illuminate just why only they were selected for this kind of special honor by the government. It is important that we notice that they were not the only ones who actually fought these wars. Just to give you one example, on the 10th of May, 1864, the entire tribe of Papupa, next to Kolazar, were almost wiped out when they were also besieged by the ZAR with the help of the Swati also. So Buleu was also killed, the leader was also killed there. There are a number of incidents that one can quote, which at some point would hope the provincial government would also take note of and consider doing something about them. The reason why one chose to come up with a book was also to assist in terms of bringing this awareness to our youth. Most of our youth are not even aware of the history of this province, let alone the role played by these forefathers, which is why today most of our traditional leaders are being taken for granted in our settings, in our settlements, not realizing the role that they have played over time. But what makes the provincial gesture even commendable is the fact that such history is told through art forms available in public domains, as we said, which should be more attractive to the youth. And as I said, one just needs to visit the nearest statue in their district. So the book appreciates Limpopo Province's response to also a call by the House of Traditional Leaders. Towards the late 1990s and early 2000s, the House of Traditional Leaders raised concerns in at least 3 areas. Number one, that there was a lack of promotion of historical past in provinces in the form of their rich history of wars of resistance and dispossession. 2, the House also noticed that provinces were lacking in terms of marketing the colonial war histories. And lastly, that the provinces were not doing enough in terms of education the present generation about the role played by these traditional leaders in our liberation struggle. And to address these issues, the House came up with strategic priorities, namely that provinces should look into promoting nation building, promoting a spirit of reconciliation, restoration of historically disadvantaged chieftainships, redressing the imbalances of the past in the portrayal of South Africa's history, and eventually promotion of social cohesion. And I'm talking of social cohesion, you would have noticed that the names of the kings that I've mentioned all belong to what used to be separate ethnicities. Sikukuni is Mupeli, Hosin Ngubunyani is Eshangana, Makado is Venda in Venda districts. Then you have Mahova, Ekaleva, you also have in the past, all of these groups used to live in separate spaces which have been united as one today. Now, to address these strategic priorities, the Limpopo province, just like other provinces, and just to name the Eastern Cape and the KwaZulu-Natal, opted to embark on the programs that sought to commemorate the wars that were fought in their territories, spearheaded by the traditional leaders in the resistance to land dispossession by colonialists. And as I've mentioned, the colonialists here in particular, we spoke of the Afrikaners, the Boers, the British, and the Portuguese. And by choosing this route, we want to say to the Limpopo province, thank you very much. You have successfully addressed the concerns of the House of Traditional Leaders. And this book sheds some values based on which the province made those choices as well. And some of those values, Prof. Twala has already spoken about them. Historically, the war of resistance constitutes an integral aspect of South Africa's pathway of preservation. Politically, the wars of resistance have been instrumental in shaping the South African landscape. Because throughout the colonial and post-colonial years, the legacies of the wars of resistance have shown tremendous influence in the subsequent political regimes. Educationally, the teachings of the wars of resistance still prevail today. I know in the CAPS document, there is also an element of emphasis on some of this. Economically, the value of the site associated with the wars of resistance can still be realized in a number of ways. And currently, tourism is one of those ways that we can actually explore to make sure that we make a lot out of the sites that celebrate the wars of resistance. Chapter 4 of the book places special focus on the designs, on the position and the location of the statues, and concludes the chapter by throwing some light regarding the functions, the form, and the symbolism of the statues. In the book, chapter 4 shows a few pictures But there are two forms of design that I want to shed light on. It's a sitting traditional leader and a standing traditional leader. Now, all of them have got some assortment of arms in their hands. And when I spoke to the sculptors, they were saying to me, it goes to weapons, but in a relaxed manner and reticent. The reason being, it is a show of saying, as much as we have the arms, which basically means we can still stand up in arms if needs be, but it is important that we indicate that all wars amongst all cultures in the provinces are over. That's basically what the sculptor says to me. Chapter 5 unpacks the shared meanings of the monument and what it means to the cohesion of a province such as Limpopo. In chapter 6, the book deals with the occasion of dedicating the statues with a message delivered through the speeches of the former Premier, Mr. Solomon. I must thank Mr. Solomon because when I started with this project, I went to him, he actually gave me a complimentary book of all his speeches, and I found all the speeches that he presented during the unveiling of the statues in that book. Those who are interested would note that in all his speeches, he actually repeated a whole number of things. From the very first unveiling to the very last, as a form of emphasizing the fact that as a province, we all experience similar histories. With this book, I tried to blend oral and written sources. I tried to blend historical and contemporary sources to try to craft a rich resource for the portrayal of the history of the Limpopo province. And you can look in the book, right at the end, you will find sources for further immersion. The book uses rich visual and textual sources to illuminate relations among all those social groups that you mentioned. But also, importantly, the illustrations should be seen by some of the students who are interested in this subject as important documents that enable them to consider works of art as historical evidence. But I also, in the book, go on to discuss some of the images at length within the narrative, and some of the captions contain a thought-provoking question to assist students to analyze the artwork. Colleagues have already indicated that the book is available for anyone who is interested in history, in heritage, politics, cultural studies, and our tour guide. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the public art of commemorating the wars of resistance, the Brief Limpopo Chapter. Thank you very much.
The book is 360 rands. You find it at Landscape, you find it outside if you want to buy it now. And also we have been told that we can access it online. And now I'm going to give over to someone who's going to respond to the book, to Dr. Sedumo. He's from the Mahunele Heritage. Dr. Sedumo is the founder and owner of Mahunele Heritage Research and Publishing CC in Bulugwane, Limpopo, South Africa. He's an author, academic, researcher of history, heritage, and cultural works, conceptualized, implemented and managed projects and programs in heritage preservation, tourism development, and environmental conservation. If he is around, we would like to welcome him now so that he can give us a response to the book.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible enough? Yes. Because we are trying to navigate through this technology, because some of us are older enough to be able to navigate properly. But having said that, colleagues, I'm very happy to be in this space today. I would certainly want to thank Dr. Mahunele Thotse for the splendid job of writing this book and also resulting in bringing us together under one roof. Specifically, I must say, after 23 years, for the first time I see Professor Lise Kriel's face, you know what? The last time I saw her, it was in 2001. So the rest is history, and that's Forest building in the University of Pretoria. So I'm very, very happy, colleagues, to be in this place today. So Dr. Thotse did a very, very good work, and as far as I'm concerned, as a heritage practitioner, I'm going to look at it with those biased lenses of heritage. Because the book itself is a huge contribution in the heritage sector, in addition to the history, culture, and arts, etc. But in our sector, in the heritage sector, it's a huge contribution. And I must say that it comes at a time in which, in this country, heritage is in a slum. Heritage is in a slum because I work in that sector, I know it. Because we started well in the 1990s, so excited about nation building, transformation, and there was hype around heritage. So there was a lot of interest around heritage issues, and everybody was excited. I remember around that time, two important national heritage acts were passed. The first one being the National Heritage Council Act and the National Heritage Resources Act. And then those two heritage acts resulted in the formation of the South African Heritage Resource Agency and the National Heritage Council. And from there, we had in each and every province, declaration of heritage resources, nationally and even internationally. We even had world heritage sites like Mahunele, Makapan's Bay, etc., etc. Robben Island, you name them. But I must say that we dropped the ball towards the first century of the 200s. And we dropped the ball towards FIFA World Cup. Excuse the pun, because the last time we as a country declared a national heritage site or a world heritage site was around 2007. From there, between 2007 and until to this day, there is really in our sector a slump in which I don't know where that interest has gone, has dissipated to. But fortunately, as I'm saying, Dr. Thotse's book comes as a fresh air. Dr. Thotse's book is now breathing a fresh air into the sector, which was, as I'm saying, was in a bit of a storm. It's awakening us. Dr. Thotse's book is awakening this sector because it is so important. Dr. Thotse knows very well how we met. We met sometimes, I don't know to say accidentally or incidentally, whatever, but when I met him, he was still working at the Arts and Culture Department in Pretoria. I was in Limpopo, we were forming the Limpopo Resource Authority. So I only learned by that time that he was my sort of successor at the University of Pretoria. He was working there with people like Professor Crane at that tall building, the HR building. He was in the same space in which I was. So we would meet with Dr. Thotse, but maybe separate, and then later to meet in other meetings, you know. But one of the biggest highlights of our meeting was when we met outside this country in Europe. I didn't know that he was going to Europe, he didn't know. But you know, I just saw someone looking like me in a meeting in Ireland, in Dundalk. You know, I was so attracted, I went over to him, and then incidentally we were even speaking the same Northern Sotho language. So, you know what, it was very, 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 very good to meet Dr. Thotse, and then from there, because we worked within the same sector, you know, we would meet many times. We met many times with Dr. Thotse. We would always have very, very fruitful and long discussions, and that is why I'm very, very happy for him come up with this very, very important book, which I think would make a very huge contribution in our society. But the question is, you can write very beautiful and informative books like this one. For instance, myself, I have written over 30 books. But the issue is, how do we mainstream? How do we ensure that this book of Dr. Thotse goes out and is read by those people who are supposed to read it? In the schools, in universities, more so that nowadays our kids are now all the day they are on TikTok. So how Dr. Thotse, can we really come up with ways in which we can ensure that the beautiful book, the informative book that you have come up with is being mainstreamed and that is distributed to the intended audiences? Because when I look into my storerooms, I see stacks and stacks of books which I have printed, but I will never stop writing or preserving heritage because I say no, there is no one who is mainstreaming our books. But maybe one day as we go along in life, maybe after the 29th of May, those who take decisions and take right decisions, I'm saying this because in society, as a society, there are those who take decisions. For instance, if you can look in our country today, you look at the departments which deal with art and culture and heritage issues, and you compare the budgets, they will tell you that, okay, no, fine, health is very important. Let's give health the lion's share of the budget. Let's give education the second largest budget. Now, me as a heritage practitioner, I always feel so bad when I see my sector being given the last change as if it is the luxury. Heritage and arts and culture issues, they are treated as if they are a luxury which we can just give them the last change from the ones allocated to the other departments. But having said that, I'm not saying I am bitter or what. I'm still encouraged by Dr. Thotse for having taken up the spear. You have breathed fresh air into us. We must ensure that from where we have brought the ball towards the 2007 to 2010, let us now ensure that in this country we revitalize and revisit those institutions of art, heritage, and the culture issues, and let us take this year forward. Thank you so much, Dr. Thotse, and all those who are under one roof today. I am very, very, very glad to be here today. Thank you so much.
I apologize for interrupting you, Fraser.
Yes.
I was wondering, the program director, with respect to everybody else who's here, the professors and doctors, and our honored guest, Dr. Mahunele Thotse, and everybody else. I was wondering and appealing, would we be given a space to maybe ask questions, make comments, even though I've not read the book? I think maybe it is possible to reflect or respond or inquire into certain issues that were raised by both the honored guest, the writer of the book, and his colleagues, Dr. Thotse and Prof. Shita Twada. I mean, I think there is some issues. I was wondering if is it possible?
Thank you. I was also proposing the same thing, that maybe this is our time to engage, moving from what Doc has just shared in terms of his concern and how heritage is dilapidating and we are still all of us here. I fully agree. This is the best time for us to do so, and then we'll move on to whatever that is still pending in terms of the program. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to engage? Either a question, a comment, it doesn't have to be specific. 1, 2. Yes,
good morning, good afternoon. Good day. And congratulations to the publishers and especially to the author, Dr. Thotse. I will just take off briefly from Dr. Clo's comment now, speaking of social media presence of these works of art, of these statues. I'm a dramatist, I write plays, I produce them, and I want to promise my giftings to you to collaborate on behalf of the university with your work and put them in dramatic forms, to be recorded and put out there in ways that will increase the mileage. Number 2, I am asking François, does history heal or open wounds, for example, of trauma from colonialism? Does history heal or open wounds of trauma from colonialism? And then, if we go down history, we will know that statues happens to be trophies in some areas. Some people make the statues, some people steal it as forms of conquest. And some people destroy it in wars. From today, I will never look at statues the same way, to be honest. And it appears like what the Catholics do when they go to church. Hail Mary, Mother of Jesus. They have conversations with statues. I've never looked at it that way. That we can have the history of the nation, the history of the people. It's comfortable when we see it in churches. But now I see that it can be replicated in society. And in a way it extends the knowledge and the understanding of history. So sir, would you be kind in the future to look also into statues as forms of art, history, forms of worship, forms of memorialization, which you have done presently, as diary, as encyclopedia, as story. I will be coming in the area of story. And then as controversy, the Cecil Rhodes statue, Rhodes must fall and all of that. How statues for some people will be history, and for some other people, the destruction of it will be a form of protest. The same statue achieving multiple purposes. I'm Yoruba, Nigeria. We have statues that have been stolen from Nigeria, from my land, in museums all over the world. And our people go there and pay to spend time, and pay to spend time with our history, with our encyclopedia. Today's conference has become very personal to me, forgive me, because I've never seen myself, over years now, coming to South Africa to work, seen myself coming to South Africa to learn the things that my society have forgotten, but to learn many things about my people. And so for me, this is more of an educatory moment for me. So statues as protest and statues as publication. Finally, I read it. Finally, Catholics will agree vehemently that statues have assisted them in worship. How can we as Africans increase our worship? Through venerating the statues of those who have assisted us over the years, over the centuries. I thank you.
Thank you. Second, should I take this? Okay, I'll take you up and then take the third person if there is any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Try to be as brief as I can. Thank you for this gift that you have just shared with us today in this forum. It's an academic forum, and from the presentations that we have had, we see that it flows from the stream of heritage. And the question is, how literate are our communities in as far as their own heritage, their historical being? I'm asking this question because a forum like this one, being an academic forum, being presented with such important work, sometimes it ends up being the consumption of the academy, to the extent that sometimes it erases the subjects who should actually be educated into who they are. That would include them being educated or re-educated in their cultural system as represented. Because now a statue is a letter, but perhaps it might be written in a language in which they are not literate in deciphering. But a work of this nature, perhaps now written in a language that will make them learn again who they are, would go a long way to contributing and actually resurrecting that heritage. Thank you.
Proctor was a shorter as this history. Is there a hand? Sorry. Oh, yes. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I first of all want to add my congratulations and well wishes to Dr. Mahunele Thotse for having produced and published this apparently very interesting historical record of the resistance of the people in the northern part of South Africa against colonials. I've not read the book, as I've said, but I do think that his remarks and his highlighting of the various chapters, what they contain, what they are about, will help us to, go and purchase the book and read it. Thank you very much for your contribution, Dr. Thotse, and for the contribution of everybody else who helped you, Prof. Lisa Creel and your colleague, Chicha Twala, and everybody else. I just wanted to say that I don't know how much time I have, but I'll try to be brief. For me, the history of this country is still being written in the discourse of our colonizers. Just as I am an African, but I declare my Africanness through English. And my colleague, friend, and associate, Dr. Akinola, touched on some of those challenges that we face culturally and politically. That when we erect a statue, we're actually discoursing and discussing through an artifact that was created for us. That is, a statue is something that you put in a museum. And you go and admire it and look at it. And does it really express the trueness and the beingness and the identity of the person and the people that it's supposed to represent? These are the questions we have to grapple with as we read and engage with the author and the book that he has produced. So I'm saying that we are discussing about our history, our culture, our politics, our heritage through a medium that is not really ours. Of course, we can change English and say, no, we want to speak pidgin English and nativize it that way. But isn't the history of Mahula's Kloof supposed to be written through the language and the dialect of the idiom of the people of Mahula's Kloof? Hoshimahua, whose head was severed from his body. Aren't we supposed to be writing through our languages? Now, this is a huge challenge. And I want to throw it open to the House and say, until we can liberate ourselves linguistically, we will never attain true liberation. And that's not an indictment. I'm not attacking any writer who uses English. I mean, Wallace Soyinka wrote in English and won the Nobel Prize for literature. Nafuz Nawib in Egypt got the Nobel Prize in literature, writing not in Arabic but in English. So, is there a way in which we can liberate ourselves from the fetters of colonialism and English? And lastly, Mokopani. Is Mokopani the same thing as Makapani? Why is there that corruption of the names, the geographical names of our country, being expressed in a different way? How are we going to liberate ourselves from all that? Is it necessary to liberate ourselves from English, from the corruption of our names, our culture, our country, our our geographical links. Those are the wars of resistance that we should be thinking about nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure who started in terms of this connection.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and thanks for the questions. In an African context, it will be difficult to divorce history from heritage, as well as divorcing heritage from history. As South Africans, we are too good to say something, but too bad in terms of sitting down and documenting what we are saying. I've written political history. I wrote a book entitled The 12 Disciples of Nelson Mandela. And after publishing that book, there were too many criticisms. But the criticisms were coming from the people whom I had lined up to interview based on that project. And some of the people who criticized were the ones who are saying, "Well, I don't see the name of my grandfather in that book." The problem with the South Africans is that we are too good in criticizing and also exaggerating. Will the book not stand the test of time if your grandfather's name is not there? Does that make that book not good enough? Because your grandfather is not there. And that is where the problem lies. I spent 6 months in Ghana at the University of Ghana in Accra. And then I was presenting in one seminar at the University History Department. And then one professor, or some from Cameroon, said to me, I remember vividly after my presentation, and said to me, the problem with you South Africans is that you want to learn from people who were never colonized. You want to benchmark with people who were never colonized and want to propagate decolonization. How to propagate decolonization when you go to the like-minded kind of people like yourself who were never colonized? In Ghana, I visited the grave of Commemorating and his wife there. I visited Commemorating's museum in Accra there. The casket that carried Commemorating from exile is still there, preserved. The academic gown that Commemorating wore for his first degree, it is still there, preserved. I went into Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. I went into a room where the main conference of 1963 of the Organization of African Unity was held. It is preserved intact. And in the University of Addis Ababa, there is a museum of his Selassie. The bag, the attire of his Selassie is there, is preserved. Where are we in South Africa? We are battling with the cheese from Robben Island. I was in Robben Island in December. You know, the grass is growing as huge as this. Nobody is taking care. Nobody is going to do it for us if we can't do it ourselves. And we need to learn from other people. of Kwame in Ghana with an amputated head is there. You can see it. They preserved it. But those people are not stealing that corpse to sell it. It is up to us. And that is why in this book we talk about historical consciousness. Are we historically conscious as South Africans? In Ghana, I spent 6 months. I've never seen on the streets of Ghana a person smoking. Not necessarily that they don't smoke, not necessarily that they don't drink, but I've never seen that. Why? Because they are conscious of being themselves. In South Africa, we are just paying lip service to Ubuntu, which is non-existent in reality. You go around here, you drive around during weekends. A person is spending those 2 days urinating there. But there are passengers in the taxi. And what I was saying about us as human beings. And those are the problems that we are challenged with today. There is this big heap of open up wounds of colonialism. It depends on which cliff are you standing. If you are using your black spectacles to look at South African history, it will be black. But if you are using your white spectacles looking at South African history, it will be white. Therefore, it depends on what is that you want to look at. In South Africa, today, we got Front Tiger Monument in Pretoria. Opposite Front Tiger Monument, we got Freedom Park. What does it say? Is it saying those 2 monuments are in conversation with each other? Because the monuments should be doing that. When you are in front of the statue should be conversing with you. When that statue, which was so meters tall and historically, and students were complaining and saying that staying since 1929 is looking down upon us. And we can't continue with those days of staying. And those are the things that as South Africans, perhaps we need to have a conversation about these things. And have an open discussion that we are having, whereby as an institution, we need to say, what is that we stand for as an institution? I was working on campus here on Saturday. I won't say what I saw. And the question is, where is the consciousness of our youngsters? In Bloemfontein, in 1994, when the Free State government took over under General Order as the premier of the Free State, in what used to be called a good building, there was a huge bust, a huge bust of fair vote, and that bust was removed. And that bust is somewhere else in the place called Commemorating. In the same South Africa, in democracy. And who should be complaining about that? We are 2 historians. And then we need the masses also to wake up and smell the coffee and avoid slipping in the middle of a revolution. And then how literate are our communities? Perhaps the biggest danger that we are doing, we speak the language, not the language of our communities. The biggest danger that we do, we have these talks to the people who are in the university community. But how many talks are we having with our communities? On Saturday, it is Freedom Day. Is it Freedom Day? Yeah, on Saturday is Freedom Day. But how many people would tell me now, point blank as historian, that so many people voted in 1994, the ANC got this majority, and then the National Party got this. Why did it happen that we had that government of national unity? And we are having declared that the deputy president is there. know that history, then you can't say you are a South African if you don't follow your history. On Saturday, people will be getting drunk, unfortunately, because they will say it's a public holiday. There's a difference between a public holiday and a public holiday. Therefore, I think we need to go out and consciousnize our communities with the racing stuff. Perhaps what I was saying, if you do have money, I know you do, is to translate that book in the languages of the province. That will help a lot. But to translate a book and to have your book in my possession, after reading it, I'm going to have it. It will gather dust. But how many people don't know about your findings? You need to go and popularize it. As a university, we also need to take a decision. Are we, as a university, trying to be a mini university in Europe? Or are we, as a university, trying to be an African university? Or are we, as a university in Africa? An African university and a university in Africa are the same. Then we need to ask those questions. They are not difficult questions, but they are critical questions. As a university, we need also to take a conscious decision and ask ourselves, whether are we Africanizing? Whether are we Africanizing? And if we say as a university we are Africanizing, that means we have dealt away with Africa. Or, as a university, are we re-Africanizing? And if we say we are re-Africanizing, that means we are saying there was no Africa, then we are bringing back and re-Africanize ourselves. And history being written from the white man's perspective. Yes, I agree. And what is it that we are doing? Because when we go out to our people and say, tell us the stories, people, they say, no, but as soon as I used to say, people are studying themselves for the reality and from what we need to know. Our African languages are very strong. Our African languages are diplomatic languages. In business, when we say, you can't translate that. You can't translate that. Institute you can't translate that. Therefore, it is not true. We need to demystify that our languages cannot be languages that we can use in writing our history. We need to demystify that. Why it is happening in other countries? Why not in South Africa? But we need to be bold as South Africans and push all the boundaries. In the Free State, there is a town called Thotse, on the borders of Lesotho. You are in Thotse, you are in Lakeland, you are in Vicksburg. Surprisingly, if you are in Vicksburg, in Maputo, in Vicksburg, in Vicksburg, there is a fence. That other side, it is Lesotho. You can easily stand in Vicksburg and communicate with a person in another country, in Lesotho. That is a woman. But you are charged with the cost. But what makes everybody different? But because it's cheaper in Lesotho. Buy a full tank, it does not make sense. The same with the Bantu State. The same with the Bantu State. If you go to Bloemfontein, you go to Botsalelo, from Botsalelo, 12 kilometers from Botsalelo is Tabanj. And Botsalelo was supposed to be under or under T. and Tabanj was under Chief Mamobi. in 2 countries, and in Botswana and in Guatemala. And within 15 minutes, you are in South Africa. And then you cross to another one, which is Botswana. When you cross another one, in 30 minutes, you are in 3 countries. What does that mean? It means that something is not right. I remember in my past life, we went to another university in Transcape. And then we saw an airport there. It was getting international departure. An airport getting international departure in the state. International departure meant coming to Pretoria. International departure. International departure. And the lesson going, we were giving letters when we went there under Satisco to play, purporting to be heavy sports, but at the same time politicizing people. We were giving letters by the translating government. You are immediately deported to South Africa. But we are in South Africa. Thank you.
I think one of the issues here is that we are dealing with someone else's mental disabilities, and it's not our problem. One thing that people don't like to say is that whoever was creating those systems, those who were white at their time, had a certain mental disability in their own way of thinking. The fact that Orania in itself still says it exposed when it says things to us, it is not us who are the problem. It is them who have had their own mental decays. But again, that's another thing.
Thank you very much. Colleagues have already hammered the responses to the questions that have been raised. Just to also try and respond to one or two. Thank you very much, Prof. I really welcome the opportunity to sit down and look into the collaboration that is most appreciated and welcome. Thank you very much. I've noted also your comments in terms of looking into further aspects of statues as a form of art, modernization, encyclopedia. Those are some of the things that we can really look into and work around. Professor Dormela, yes, your question is a critical one. It has been responded to. Perhaps just also to augment how Prof. Twala responded by simply indicating, for instance, as an example, when this project started in the Limpopo province, communities were allowed on the day of celebration, on the day of unveiling, communities were allowed to bring in their forms of celebrations, depending on where they're coming from. Goats will be slaughtered, they will be allowed to recite their ancestral slogans, and at the same time they were being alarmed, but it's also being made aware of who they are, where they come from. What Dr. Situmo says that we have since dropped the ball, that is no longer happening, but that is one way that we could use to actually continue to make communities aware of who they are, who their histories are, because that is how it has been happening over the last few years. But we have since stopped. Perhaps that is something that needs to be resuscitated. In terms of the question on history being retained from the discourse of the colonizers, again, just to add to what Prof. Twala has indicated, nothing really stops us from looking into, as he has said, looking into dealing with these aspects the way that as communities and as the people
we would like to. Eric Hobsbawm and Terence Ranger, in their work, Invention of Tradition, they are saying to us, look, in a case where there is nothing to refer to, nothing stops you from inventing something of your own. If our communities are not able to create, what stops us from gathering, coming together and discussing how best we can look into our history, write it in the way that we feel we are comfortable with, rather than having always to look at the other end and say, but this is how we have been represented by the other white groups. So basically what I'm saying is, it is possible to invent our own traditions for as long as we take ownership of those traditions. Right, lastly, Mukopani versus Makapan, it's actually something that needs to be discussed. Even as I was referring to the massive tombstone, you go through that tombstone, you will come across a number of corrupted names, spellings. That's something that also needs to be looked into, and there's a whole lot of them. The project of changing names in the provinces and in South Africa is that one of those was based on the premise that names have been corrupted. And this is something that hasn't ended. There are a number of names that still need to be looked into, and if needs be changed and written anew in a manner that as a people we are comfortable with. Yes, Prof, the issue of translating the book, I'm taking note of that one. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for this.
I also think when you talk that you could consider also publishing an audio version of the book. It's known that most of us don't like reading, but listening is better. And also there's a community of visually impaired students that we have. When we used to educate universities, unfortunately, most of the time it's usually the same people who attend because of access in terms of the material being produced. So maybe publishing as well an audio version where we can listen, catch up that the introduction to forward. It could also work to sort of promote your book and make it accessible. Lastly, I'm going to ask Dr. Malakela, a senior lecturer in geography in the discipline department, to come and give us a vote of thanks. It has been lovely to work with us.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Madam Thotse. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me just to take this moment to thank you. You deserve a big thank you simply because you left all your days schedule. Some were started because we started around 12, but then you decided, are you going to finish this today? Let me go and be a guest as I've been invited. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important for me just to indicate that you were welcome when you entered here. That made you to feel at home, to feel warm. And we want to take this opportunity to thank Madam Sharoma. You welcomed us in here, and we appreciate that very much. You know what, the role that you played is very important because you come in all the way from the library, I guess, and the library is where archives, in the form of either books or whatever resources are kept. And so your presence to this type of education means a lot. And it poses a challenge to all that are in here to go and do what Dr. Thotse has done. He did the simple thing, just to buy it. And all, that's what Professor Tola told us. We It sounds abnormal, but we've seen that the drought can actually be beaten. And this is what we're going to go and do it. Students, professors, staff members, please ensure that we go into this area that is not being advanced. We have heard what the aim of Mahunele heritage specialists is indicating that history is now falling into, I'm losing the geography concept, it's falling into the doldrum, going into the slum. Are we there to witness that situation? The answer is no. Let's resuscitate it. Dr. Thotse has shown us. And we want to thank you for having taken that opportunity to show us that we can revive history. And in this, it's exactly what we needed. Very important. Those that were online, the publishers represented by Ms. Mahunele, we want to thank them. It's an opportunity, for them. I mean, they are not with us here, but technology is making it easy for us to engage with them. And she just indicated that they've looked at this as an excellent piece of work. I mean, they've seen it as an excellent piece of work. And they've also seen that they were cooperating with Dr. Thotse in a manner that they became so astonished. So it means this is the work that we need to pride ourselves on. As we have heard Professor Kriel saying, well, thank you, Professor Kriel, saying that the work is measured at international standards. We didn't know that. When I got the book, when he told me about it, I didn't see that. But then Professor Kriel sees it as one of those international standard products. Who are we not to go about talking about it? Because this is a book to be well received in Limpopo. We so this is Limpopo when we need to actually show that this piece of work goes internationally. It's worth considering. And we need to build on it. It has pioneered our journey. So we need to take care of that and be sure that we do the right thing. Professor Twala, engineer. We don't have engineers in history, but today I've seen an engineer in you. You've just indicated to us how important history is. I've just noted that as coming from the geography, history is also playing a very important role in my practices in geography. Because this place, there are issues that we go about taking on the environment. How do we protect them as geographers so that they remain important icons of our nation? Thank you very much for that. And the engagement, I didn't realize, most people may not have realized that just a simple date, just a simple day on which you were at a particular occasion, it means history on its own, and we take it, we take it for granted. So we are not used to documenting like Professor Twala has shared with us recently. We are lazy to write. We can talk, but lazy to write. So he has just shown us that we need to take care of that. It's very, very important. They get the engagement that came out of the responses, how we responded them, and how Dr. Thotse responded. We want to thank you for that. That's shown a lot of the importance in what people are sharing. Dr. Thotse, you are an author. You are not a guest, an audience. You are an author, and today you're going to be an author to me, as I've heard it. You have revealed that other components of your life that I didn't know, and I've noted it today. Thank you very much, and be exemplary to our, our generation, so to say. We're not a generation of writing, we're a generation of talking, and that is not taking us anywhere. Because when we die with this information, so we need to take care of that. We had the Mahunele vintage experts. Well, thank you very much, sir, for the information that you shared with us. And he's so passionate about this subject. We cannot explain it better about that. Our director, Professor Mahunele, it's a very good thing that you showed. You showed up. I think when you live here, you really create a position in your office, next to your office, of the deputy director. You'll see the deputy director that comes from this unit. So thank you very much for being present here. It gives that morale, to show that our supervisors are indeed keen to support us. Thank you very much for that. The family of the Thotse, because I was kind of searching around to say, can I say something? Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, elder brother. Our Mishoyano was reminding Shawu, Lord, let me go and see what he's inviting us for. These are the great things that he has done for the English community and Limpopo and the world at large. And hopefully, in some, you are seeing what your father is doing and learn out of that. Thank you very much for being us. Doing someone else, doing some other things, of your youth, But you felt it's very important just to go and listen and hear what you are sharing information. Thank you very much. Please extend the message to the mom when you are at home, and your siblings, tell them about this. Very, very important. The guests, attendees, you've been so lovely that seeing you paying attention. I said, yeah, you've come to the right place. And showing that you pay attention. That's why it was asked, requested, by Professor at the bank. They said, can we engage? Share some questions. So it shows that people have been listening. And we want to thank you very much for listening. We hope you have gotten something out of this discussion. The media. Where are you? Again, oh yes. You see, you put yourself on one side, so you can't listen. Thank you very much for connecting us throughout the session. We managed to collaborate with you with the University of Pretoria. And it will be of you. You can just imagine. What would happen. Yes, thank you very much. The book is to be possessed, ladies and gentlemen. I have one. I'm going to buy another one. Upon receiving this book, I shared it with my friends. I said, go over this thing. He said, can you organize the book? I said, we're watching it today. I'm going to bring you one. Thank you very much. Be sure that you all have it. Encourage your friends so that we continue supporting our nation to grow. Thank you very much.